Well, how did everybody's holiday go? If you're in the US, you know that we have just passed one of our biggest holidays of the year, Thanksgiving. It kicks off a number of holidays, depending on what you celebrate, that all happen in December. And it's usually a pretty tense time of year, which is interesting because the sales pitch for this time of year is happy, fun, joyful, grateful. But for me, being an energy antenna, and I can read energy really well, really quickly. Sometimes that's a great thing, and sometimes that's an awful thing. But, but for me, I get a flash as soon as I talk to somebody. I just have a whole download about what's going on in their system. And I can say that this was a Thanksgiving for most that had some elements of tension. And I think that most of these holidays do, even though we like to pretend that they don't. We like to pretend that it's all about the merry, joyful experience. But usually there's so much baggage that comes along with the merry, joyful experience. And so we're going to talk about some of that this week and how it shows up astrologically and how it has just been showing up for all of us on one level or another. I'm Natha Perkins of Electra Astrology. This is my weekly Path Ahead astrology forecast. I'm going to go through the astrology of the week and talk about the energy that's accompanying it and just see whether we can unpack some of this and get you some insight to help you understand your family dynamics a little bit better. So, this is the week of December 1st through the 7th. Happy December. We are almost at the end of 2025, which is bringing us to the end of a lot of astrological cycles that have been heavy and hard. We have Saturn and Neptune still at these final degrees of Pisces. And we have Uranus now back in the final degrees of Taurus. But by 2026, by the first few months of 2026, these planets will have moved into their new signs, which is Aries and Gemini, respectively, for good, for a while, for at least 3 years for Saturn, much longer for Uranus and Neptune. We already have Pluto having made its ingress into Aquarius. It'll be in Aquarius for the next 19 or 20 years at this point. So we are in a lot of transition and we're kind of sitting with the brakes on, like we're in our car waiting to load our car onto the ferry that is then going to take us across the bay to the new island. And it's frustrating and we're all here. So we've all been contemplating like what is next? What is coming? What am I supposed to be doing? And of course, I have been doing that as well, trying to make sense of what it is that I want to offer you guys, what's really in alignment for me at this point. There are so many voices, there are so many people yapping and talking and giving their opinion almost to the point of exhaustion. And I don't really want to be one of those people. And as I am always talking to you guys about when I'm doing readings with you, this is your life. And you are here to make an impact, but you're also here to do what is in alignment with you and what your soul mission is. And so, same here. Hi, we're all doing this together. Over the past few years, I've had different areas of focus. 2025 was really a video focused year. 2024 was a teaching focused year, and we can go back and every year I'm experimenting with a different quality. I'm a manifesting generator in human design. So when I am inspired by an idea, I have tons of energy. And when I am drained and I have no energy, that is an indication to me that I need to get inspired. So on my recent trip across the world, as I've shared a little bit about, my friend and colleague Tammy Salas gave me an idea about Substack. I've had a Substack, I've never released anything on it, but holding live gatherings has been something that I've always enjoyed. After I closed down my Hidden Wisdom Astrology Circle, where we gathered live every few weeks for about 4 years, I haven't done so much. I've done a few live moon circles in Colorado, but I want to experiment with having more of a Q&A kind of forum for people because here's how I see it. What we're moving into is less about me sitting in front of you and telling you about your life using astrology, and much more about getting into the nitty gritty and really doing the personal work that's required in order to evolve and grow. So, as I have told you guys, I am moving into some different things in the electroastrology practice. But the first thing that I'm going to introduce you guys to is the Substack. Through the Substack, I will be releasing free stuff as always, but you're going to have an opportunity to buy in at a very low price every month so that you can join me for office hours for Q&A so that we can gather live and get into things that are a little bit more specific for what you're dealing with because this transformation stuff, it requires a lot. It requires a lot of work on our part to get it fine-tuned. We're not really in that part anymore where we can either be on autopilot and just live in a state of reactivity. And we're also not in this part where it's all juicy, luscious downloads that we take on and then we instantly forget. This is more about the settling in to really do the work that carries you from one place of consciousness into a place where you're really connecting. You're really seeing what it is that you're here to do, what is really happening on this planet, things that have been hidden from us thus far, but are starting to reveal. And a lot of the people here on the planet right now, that those things will remain hidden. But you, listening to this, you are starting to see how it works. And I would like to be your guide, one of your guides for that. So if you're on Substack, find me, become a free subscriber, become a paying subscriber if you feel like you would love to join me for some of the deeper offerings that I'll be doing. And we're going to give it a try. We're going to see if I like it. If it feels like it's more enriching than Instagram. Instagram for me over the past year or so has started to feel a little empty. And who wants emptiness? It's also so full of people with their opinions that it's a little bit hard to get on there. The energy feels dense and thick. So we're going to try a little something new. And I say, let's start looking at the charts. This is a great segue into some new stuff. All right, so last week we did the Venus gauntlet. We were still undergoing these questions around value. And I think that's part of what Thanksgiving brought up for a lot of us. So look back over your week, most especially over your holiday, and get a sense of the energy. How was it? Because we use the energy of that holiday to help us get an understanding around the Sagittarian lessons. So the Sagittarian lessons are connected to pretending. What is the narrative that we have? Sagittarius is about being able to see the big picture, the story of what's happening. And Venus brings up questions around money, around abundance, how much you have, how much you don't have, who's getting what, who's doing what with who. And I'm looking at Thanksgiving as part of the lens of what is happening because Thanksgiving is definitely one of those holidays where we have a narrative about what it's supposed to be like. We're grateful, we're gathering, we're appreciative, we have abundance. And usually there's a little bit underneath that. So those kind of beliefs are very Sagittarius. It's like, yes, everything looks great from afar. It's going to be amazing. And then you start to get down into the Gemini minutia, and we realize, ooh, it's a little bit tricky and complicated. And I think this last week was even trickier and more complicated because Venus was making all of these connections, first with Chiron, then with Jupiter, then with Saturn, then with Neptune, Uranus, and now she makes a connection with Pluto. So even though most of those connections were harmonious, it was still bringing things to the surface. So look back over your last week. Just get an understanding. What did your energy feel like? What were you dreading? And how did it actually turn out? What were you expecting? And how did it actually turn out? What were you idealizing? And how did it actually turn out? Because this information is really important for you moving forward because this is all about looking at the story of what we've been told, what we're pretending to do, and what the truth is. So those are big themes because we just saw Mercury in retrograde go between Sagittarius and Scorpio. Mercury's finally direct again, but Sagittarius and Scorpio, Scorpio is the deep, dark, hidden truths, and Sagittarius is the big picture and what we hope, what we wish to see, and how we decide to see it. All right, so we're working with those themes. I think too that Venus in a sextile to Pluto is bringing in elements of the people and the cast of characters, as my dad used to call them, the cast of characters in your life. And what did the cast of characters teach you this past week? Because we know that everybody that's close to us, everybody that we're interacting with on a regular basis, they are here to help us see ourselves. They're here to teach us. We're here to teach them. It's all very interconnected. And these holidays do have a way of teaching us so much about who we are and what we're doing and what's important and what our values are. On Tuesday, we're watching Mars come up on Juno, and we're also watching Venus make a trine to Ceres. One of the things about Juno, and I did some great Juno talks under my Astrology for Awakening series. You can find that playlist on YouTube. I go through 70 episodes through all of the zodiac archetypes and also asteroids. But the thing about Juno is it is the matriarchal energy. So as we're looking at this energy of the matriarch, whether it is in your family, whether it is who you are becoming, or it's just you in your own life, when Mars makes a conjunction with Juno in the sign of Sag, it is a call to examine what that meaning is for you. What kind of matriarch are you? And you can be the matriarch of your family. You can also be the matriarch that is moving and shaking and connecting the people in your life. You can be the matriarch that's in your relationships. And just think about the energy of the feminine leadership role. And what kind of leadership role are you taking? What kind of energy are you bringing to the group? Are you setting a good example? Are you having good boundaries? Are you an inspiration? These are all good questions to ask yourself as we're going through the holidays. And there are so many expectations around the story. Whether we're operating from an outdated story, this is how it used to be, and therefore this is how it should be now, or we're operating in this idealized version of the future story. I want it to be good, and here's what I'm going to do to make it good. And because we're in Sagittarius season and we have this whole pile of planets in Sag, and we have a full moon this week in Gemini, which also brings in those Sagittarius themes. We have Jupiter here in Cancer retrograde, bringing in Sagittarian themes. And this is where we're really tasked with looking at what we think is true and what the storyline is and what the fantasy is, and maybe doing some recalibration about what the actual story is. The truth versus the fantasy, the truth versus the idealization, the truth versus the storyline of disappointment, like whatever it looks like. And of course, Venus in a trine to Ceres is more of that motherly theme coming up. And that's something that I was looking at this week as we went through holidays is being the mother in my little family. What kind of energy do I want to bring? How do I want to show up as the mother? And how does mothering in general feel in my body? What feels uncomfortable? What feels like it's not a fit? And what feels like it's a good holding environment? You guys have heard me talk about this idea of the cauldron, how the mother energy is the cauldron of the family. The mother is the one that holds everything together, the soup of the family. And so, what kind of cauldron are you? Ideally, what you want is a cauldron that is solid, that can hold the soup as it boils, that can hold new ingredients, that's not going to have a chemical reactivity to an ingredient. It's not going to crack and leak the soup out. It's not going to dry boil and leave you with nothing. So Venus in trine to Ceres is going to ask, what kind of cauldron are you? And we still have some holidays left, regardless of what you celebrate. So getting some clarity on how to approach the next holiday can be really helpful. And you might get some good downloads on that this week. On December 4th, we have that full moon in Gemini. It's at 13 degrees. And I want to show you that this is in an exact connection with the nodes. This is a square. This full moon squares the nodes. So, oh boy. These are all the mutables. The mutables are the energy that you can't pin down. It is always changing, very low predictability, which can be frustrating for a lot of us that just want to know. So be open to a week where nothing is concrete, nothing really stays the same, and there's a lot of fast moving action because the full moon in Gemini, Gemini wants to keep the story going. So getting stuck in the fantasy or getting stuck in the disappointment or whatever it is that you get stuck in is not supported this week, especially with this South Node being in Virgo, which also says you won't be able to control anything. And the sun in Sagittarius says there are a million ways to look at this. And then the North Node in Pisces is all about relaxing and just letting the cards fall where they will. So this is going to be a week where we just have to let it go. We can think about things, we can contemplate, we can inquire, we can say, how was it? How do I wish it could be? Is there anything that I can do to change my reaction, to change the way that I'm choosing to see this, to change the way that my perspective or my perception feels? And if so, I would like to do that. And then we have to let it go. We have to let ourselves be carried on the wave of what will be. So I talk to a lot of you, a lot of people, even if it's not totally coloring your experience, there's a lot of fear mongering that goes on behind the scenes. It's woven throughout the media. It is something that people talk about. Everything feels very scary. Oh, there's a lot of bad things that could happen. Try really hard not to get too sucked into those narratives because we are in too much of a flow energy. There's nothing that is set in stone right now. There is nothing that is very predictable right now. So, of course, we don't want to predict the worst because it's probably not going to happen, right? Fingers crossed. And we want to be prepared for having to course correct if that's what's needed too. And this mutable energy is going to help facilitate course correction when it comes up. On Saturday, we're still looking at this really nice grand trine between Mercury, Saturn, and Jupiter. It's a water trine. It is emotional. It is water. You never know what you're going to get with water. So it's more of this fluid energy. And we may notice different emotions coming in, but look at it like these are emotions that are coming in to be looked at so that they can wash away. Don't get too caught up in an emotional response. Don't use the emotional reactivity that shows up as the gospel truth. You just look at it like it's information that's here to help you understand something so that you can process it, let it go, make room for what's coming. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. Don't forget to check out the Substack. It's Astrology, and I hope you have a good week. Hope this was helpful. I'll see you all soon.